The evening light filtered through the lace curtains of Margaret Johnson's living room, casting delicate patterns across the worn hardwood floor. She sat in her armchair, the same one she had occupied for 23 years, with a cup of chamomile tea cooling on the side table. The television murmured in the background, but she wasn't watching. She rarely did anymore. It was simply noise to fill the silence that had become her constant companion. Maggie rose slowly, her knees protesting the movement with familiar aches. At 68, her body reminded her daily that the years of 12-hour shifts at San Diego General Hospital had taken their toll. She moved to the kitchen sink and rinsed her cup with practiced efficiency. The same methodical precision she had once applied to checking medication dosages and monitoring patient vitals. Even in retirement, old habits persisted. Through the window above the sink, she could see her small backyard garden. The roses she had planted 3 springs ago were thriving, their late-season blooms still clinging to life despite the October chill. She had learned to find satisfaction in these small victories: a well-tended garden, a spotless kitchen, the predictable rhythm of her days. It wasn't the life she had imagined for herself at this age, but it was the life she had. The photograph on the refrigerator caught her eye, as it did every evening. Daniel at 25, graduation day. His engineering degree finally in hand after years of her scraping together tuition payments. His smile in that picture was so bright, so full of promise. She remembered how her chest had swelled with pride that day, how she had thought all the sacrifices, the double shifts, the missed vacations, the years of single motherhood after Richard left had finally paid off. That was 8 years ago. 5 years since she had last heard his voice. Maggie turned away from the photograph and dried her hands on a dish towel. The argument replayed in her mind, as it often did in these quiet moments. Though she tried not to dwell on it, she had only voiced her concerns about Jessica, the woman Daniel had married after a whirlwind 6-month courtship. Something in Jessica's eyes had troubled Maggie from their first meeting, a certain calculation behind the practiced smiles. But when she had gently suggested that Daniel slow down, think things through, he had exploded. "You've never wanted me to be happy," he had shouted, his face flushed with anger she had never seen before. "You're trying to ruin this because you can't stand that I'm building a life that doesn't revolve around you." The words had cut deeper than any scalpel. She had raised him alone, poured everything into giving him opportunities she never had, and in one conversation, he had reduced her love to possessiveness, her concern to manipulation. The last thing he had said before walking out, "Don't contact me. We're done." She had respected his wishes, though it had nearly killed her. No calls on his birthday. No messages on holidays. Just silence and the hope that one day he would understand. She had only wanted to protect him. Maggie walked through her small home, adjusting a picture frame here, straightening a throw pillow there. The house had always been modest, a 2-bedroom bungalow in a working-class neighborhood on the outskirts of San Diego, but she had made it warm. The walls held memories: Daniel's elementary school art projects, still framed across stitch. Sampler: her mother had made photographs of colleagues from the hospital at various retirement parties. She paused at the closed door of Daniel's old bedroom. She kept it clean, the bed made with fresh sheets changed monthly, though no one had slept there in years. Some part of her, the stubborn, hopeful part that had survived Richard's abandonment and raised a child on a nurse's salary, refused to convert it into storage or a craft room. It remained waiting, just in case. The knock came at 6:47 p.m., just as the autumn darkness was settling over the neighborhood. It was so hesitant, so soft, that Maggie almost convinced herself she had imagined it. But then it came. Again, 3 uncertain taps that seemed to apologize for the intrusion. She moved to the door, her heart beginning to race in a way her clinical training recognized as anxiety. No one visited her at this hour. Her few remaining friends always called first. The neighborhood children didn't trick or treat at her house anymore. She had been the quiet, solitary presence on the street for too long. Through the peephole, she saw a figure that made her breath catch. The man on her doorstep was hunched against the evening chill, his jacket thin and inadequate. His hair, once neatly trimmed, hung lank and unwashed. But she would have known those shoulders anywhere. The particular way he shifted his weight when nervous. Maggie's hand trembled as she unlatched the chain and turned the deadbolt. She pulled the door open, and the porch light illuminated a face that was both achingly familiar and shockingly transformed. Daniel stood before her, but not the Daniel of the photograph on her refrigerator. This Daniel had hollowed cheeks and dark circles beneath his eyes. His skin had a grayish pallor that her nursing instincts immediately flagged as concerning. His clothes hung loose on a frame that had lost at least 20 pounds. But it was his eyes that struck her most, once confident and bright, now haunted and desperate. For a moment, neither spoke. 5 years of silence stretched between them, heavy with everything unsaid. "Mom," he finally whispered, and his voice cracked on the single syllable. "I need help." Maggie felt the tears rise immediately, tears of relief, anger, sorrow, and a love that had never diminished despite the years and wounds. Her hand rose to her mouth, pressing against the emotion that threatened to overflow. Every instinct she had developed over decades of nursing, of assessing and responding to human suffering, kicked in. But beneath the clinical evaluation, he's malnourished, exhausted, possibly in shock, was something more primal. Her son had come home. She stepped aside, pulling the door wider. "Come in," she managed, her voice steadier than she felt. "Come inside." Daniel crossed the threshold, and Maggie closed the door behind him, shutting out the October darkness. As she guided him toward the kitchen, toward warmth and light and the possibility of healing, she knew that whatever had brought him back, whatever had reduced him to this broken state, would soon reveal itself. And though her heart was already bracing for the story he would tell, one thing was certain: she would not turn him away. That was what mothers did, even when their children broke their hearts. They opened the door. They made space at the table. They loved, even when love had been rejected and abandoned. The house was no longer silent. And Maggie Johnson, retired nurse and wounded mother, felt something she hadn't felt in 5 long years. Purpose.